Hey there, this is James Carberry, founder of Sweetfish Media and one of the co-hosts of this show. For the last year and a half, I've been working on my very first book. In the book, I share the three-part framework we've used as the foundation for our growth here at Sweetfish. Now, there are lots of companies that have raised a bunch of money and have grown insanely fast, and we've featured a lot of them here on the show. We've decided to bootstrap our business, which usually equates to pretty slow growth. But using the strategy outlined in the book, we're on pace to be one of Inc.'s fastest growing companies in 2020. The book is called Content-Based Networking: How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. If you're a fan of audiobooks like me, you can find the book on Audible, or if you like physical books, you can also find it on Amazon. Just search Content-Based Networking or James Carberry, Carbary, in Audible or Amazon, and it should pop right up. All right, let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. As we've been doing throughout January, we continue our countdown of the top 20 episodes of 2019 here in our hashtag Best of 2019 series. If you've been following along, you know that yesterday, coming in at number 4, was the first part in our 2-part series on starting your first ABM program with Lauren Vaccarello. Not surprisingly, number 3 is part 2 in that 2-episode series we did with Lauren last year. To get more episodes coming up in the countdown, make sure you're subscribed to the show in Apple Podcasts or wherever you do your listening. You can also check out the full list at sweetfishmedia.com/blog. Just look for the hashtag Best of 2019 in the categories on the right-hand side of that page. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. In today's episode, we continue the conversation from yesterday's episode with Lauren Vaccarello. She is the former VP of Marketing and Customer Engagement at Box. She shared yesterday a systematic approach to breaking down your 3 high-level goals in starting your first ABM program. She was instrumental in leading the first ABM program at Box, and today she gets even more granular in the tactics and strategies she recommends from her lessons learned there. So with that, let's get back into the conversation with Lauren. So you touched a little bit on a few lessons learned throughout as you've been talking about it, Lauren. You mentioned, you've got to track at the account level. You don't necessarily need to invest a ton in technology in the early days as you get it going, especially if you're trying to kind of soft launch it and get some buy-in early before you're really asking for a ton more budget at a higher level within sales. What are some of the other lessons learned that you think you would have liked to have known early on in these days and might be helpful for listeners too?
So we went with the hardest possible route in terms of account selection.
Okay.
So we said, we want to prove the effectiveness of what we're doing. So what we're going to do is we're going to find accounts that sales has had absolutely no luck with. They are like running into a brick wall. They have not had good account penetration. It just hasn't been working. What would have been so much easier is doing land and expand. So you have small deployments in existing accounts, and let's work with sales to expand deployments. And it'll happen faster. You'll have more success faster. We definitely went with the hardest road possible.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah, you know what? If you're going to do something, you just might as well go for it.
Yeah,
But the flip side of it is you cut your teeth on the hardest thing. It makes everything a lot easier and improves value more. Other things that you don't know what you don't know is in our mind, and we had a couple of people. Eventually, it started as one person on my team's part-time job with ABM, and then this full-time job, and then we had another person whose full-time was on account-based marketing. With their full-time job, and they're thinking about ABM all day. The sellers, and you're like, okay, great, I've got 5 accounts from this AE, and we're going to work together on it. The AE has a lot more than 5 accounts that they're working on, and so does their EBR or OBR that they're working with. Yes. So you can't assume that, okay, we are going to go really deep into, we're going to get everything about them. And obviously their EBR or OBR is going to go in and call everyone in G and find everyone and really pound the pavement for G. The OBR or EBR, depending on what they're called in the organization, is I'm going to go call these other accounts that are easier, and the rep told me to do this. And what's that thing that you're doing? So don't, even when they're really excited and supportive, don't assume that is the only thing that they're doing and working on, which is honestly why we ended up doing the external appointment setting. And we ended up letting the OBRs focus on the whole breadth of the AU's territory. And then we really went deep on the accounts that a rep would have in the ABM program. So that was definitely a good reminder and lesson. One of my favorite tips that I was like, I can give this, that I thought worked really, really well. So I talked about a BAS and you want reps in the room with your target accounts and with key decision makers and target accounts. And so I haven't been a seller in years. So it's up to them to sort of, once we get them in a room, I'm not going to close the deal. I need to get them in a room, give them an at-bat, and then it's sort of up to them. So things that we did, how do I get them in a room in a really targeted way that's also sort of a natural, organic setting? So we ended up partnering our ABM program with our field marketing program. And we have a whole field marketing program that's going into territory. And we had obviously all of our ABM accounts mapped by territory. So for the field marketer covering Central, she also knew, well, yep, I've got Central, I have my whole territory, blah, blah, blah. I have, 30 accounts in Central that are part of the ABM program. And if I am running an event in Chicago, I need to make sure that any ABM account that is in or near Chicago not only gets invited, but I really sort of go above and beyond to try to get them in the room. And I make sure that rep is there. And if I am sponsoring a trade show or there's some sort of sponsored event that is in Chicago, I now want to call that event and say, hey, can you invite these 3 people for me? Can you invite these people from these accounts for me to your event? And hey, if you're hosting this, event sponsored dinner, can you invite these people to this dinner for me? And after you do, I want them to sit next to my rep. And, you don't know what they'll say no to unless you ask.
Right.
And for us, it was like, how do we make sure we provide as many opportunities as possible? Once I give them the opportunity, I'm not going to be the one to close the deal, but I'm going to give the reps as many chances as they can.
Yeah, I love that idea of kind of the next level orchestration, not just helping them book sales calls and demos, but giving them the opportunity to rub shoulders with the accounts that they want to be in front of in other sorts of ways. Kind of ask for forgiveness, not permission there. What's the worst thing that that event organizer is going to say? No. Okay.
Exactly. And then you're like, all right.
All right, fine. I just figured I'd ask. I love that. Well, Lauren, this has been a great conversation. And anything else that you would add? You mentioned, some technology, the account selection. That's what I was thinking of earlier as you were mentioning you guys kind of going the hard route of, let's find the ones where sales has just been beating their head against the wall, and we'll help them break in and we'll be the heroes. Maybe there's some learning to be had there. Maybe there's a better way in. Do you recommend, and you have a whole slide and some of the technology and other pieces, and you mentioned using the outside agency for appointment setting and sales development. Would you recommend folks kind of look at, predictive intent data, that sort of stuff on the front end, that could be a crucial piece to really getting some earlier quick wins, or maybe starting at least not up such a steep hill as you guys did?
Yes, absolutely. So we ended up doing sort of the proof of concept, and then we did a small pilot, and then we sort of went all in on it. For the small pilot to all in, and we did the transition, what I'd really recommend doing, part of the reason we had to do this the really grassroots way was also know the culture of your organization. And this was just the better path. So how we did when we did the actual pilot is us, and then we changed it again to the real method when we actually launched the program, was sitting down with sales and saying sales, and actually sales leadership, not the individual, opportunistic reps, and sales leadership, and said, I want a list of who are the most important accounts for you to go after next quarter, next year. And let's have sales and marketing come together and say, what is our one list? Because what you don't want to happen is marketing to build their account-based marketing target list and sales to build their target list. And there's like a 40% overlap. Because then again, sales will come back and say, these marketers have no idea what they're talking about or what they're doing. So build that list together. And the most important thing is once you have this list, sales, marketing, and honestly, customer success all need to know the list, all need to be bought in and have the same target account list. So the first time we did it in the pilot, it was still sort of marketing proving itself. So we took the target list from sales and basically just took their list and said, okay, we'll do it. Again, once we really proved the efficacy of the program, when we really launched the full program, we did a couple of things. So quick aside, we have an incredible data science team, and we ran a couple of models for SMB, mid-market, and enterprise of what are the best accounts according to sales, and then according to a predictive model, our internal predictive model, and then also using a predictive analytics solution. And who are the best accounts? And we establish this, we run the program, do regression analysis, and it turns out in SMB, the predictive programs far outperform what the sellers say in terms of who are the best accounts. In the enterprise, sales was actually really, really close. And sales and predictive of like who are the best accounts were actually like neck and neck in terms of what actually is the best accounts. And there are even some times that the sellers beat the predictive programs. And you could say, well, you know what, the sellers, there are fewer accounts. They should know their program better. But what was really interesting in enterprise is when we took who the sellers said, these are the target accounts, these are the best accounts. And then we took the data from the predictive program and we overlaid the two. Where there was an overlap, it was a significant increase. So it's like sellers say this is good and the predictive program says this is good is sort of where the magic happened. So that's how we came up with the basis of our target account list. Once we really launched the program was, okay, sales, what do you got? Who's important? Sort of our homegrown predictive data, our homegrown data, and then our predictive analytics solution based on intent signals, all of this other data, user fit models. Who's the best? This is our overlap. And then we'd sit down with sales and say, this is our validated list. You go back and forth, and then sales will say, hey, G's not on the list. You missed these. We want to add these opportunistically. And you're like, great. We are totally okay with expanding and adding things opportunistically. It doesn't quite fit the model, but we all know reality and models are different. And that's how we came up with and agreed on the sort of the final list for our program. And then we reevaluate, I think every 6 months or so, just to see, does anything need to be added or subtracted? So that's really how we do the account selection now. I like using predictive as a part for account selection. A lot of it is just for fit models, for overall intent and intent scores, who's in market, and really pulling in some of that data is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to do my best to kind of recap some of the things here, Lauren, because you have done a phenomenal job of unpacking so many tactical takeaways for listeners. I think, what really hits me about the way that you guys structured it, or at least the way you learned after the fact, is starting out with those three main goals of providing account intelligence, driving awareness and engagement, and then helping sales land and expand. And really looking at all of your efforts broken into those three buckets, I think can make launching an ABM program that much more approachable for folks. Some of the things that you touched on that I think are really, really helpful for listeners. We just talked about it there, aligning with sales on account selection, using a mix of sales' input as well as predictive and intent data. You touched on it a couple times, tracking on the account level, not on the contact level. The third one I had was try a pilot. I think that's so important. I think everyone's talking about sales and marketing alignment, especially within ABM. They understand that it's important, but I think you laid out a very great game plan on how to actually effectively do that. And then the last two are, working with sales and not just sales leadership in the way that you guys executed your pilot program. And then last but not least, track those short, mid, and long-term goals and be very granular about those so that you can see, are you heading in the right direction? And you can, not to use a word you wanted to get away from, but so that you can get credit for those quick wins and those midterm wins, because it's not about credit. It's about, maintaining the momentum of the program if you want to get budget for, a fully built out ABM team. So, Lauren, I can't thank you enough for being on the show today. I feel like you've given so many tactical takeaways, as I mentioned to listeners today. If anybody listening to this, I know they can find you on certain episodes of the Marketing Trends podcast. I've been listening and getting a ton of value, a lot of great guests on that show. Where can they find you there? Or if they just want to connect with you or ask any follow-up questions on all of the great content you've shared with us today, what's the best way for folks to find you?
Sure. Definitely Marketing Trends podcast. Twice a week, great episodes, great guests. You get a lot of humor and sarcasm from me, fun stories, and incredible other speakers. I am publicly on Twitter at Lauren V. I promise to respond more often. Find me on LinkedIn, or you can email me on the mission, which is just Lauren at the mission.
Awesome. I love it. Lauren, thank you again for being on the show today. This was a ton of fun.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.